Well, hello again, everybody. I'm Cindi Standley. I am a teaching artist, but I'm also a physiologist. I teach at the University of Arizona College of Medicine, Phoenix. So, as an educator, I always like to provide a little bit of background. And as you're looking at these images, I want you to start thinking about how you might want to create your galaxy. So this is a little close-up of what we're going to be doing today. So you can see my watercolor, and I've got some white paint spatter kind of mimicking stars. And then I've got this area where I've done some pattern drawing. So we're going to be doing a combination of watercolor and pen and ink or pattern drawing today. So here is a picture of a galaxy, and you might be asking, how was our galaxy formed? And galaxies really are comprised of dark matter, and astronomers don't really know what dark matter is exactly, but they know it's invisible, it takes up most of the matter in the universe, and it triggers the growth of gas and clouds of dust. So it's shaped as this huge sphere around the space, and you're going to have it shaped around your area of pattern drawing and kind of sprinkle it throughout your galaxy. Here's another image, and I want you to look at the colors. Start thinking about what colors you want to have. This one's got a lot of red and a lot of yellow, and this is called the Illustris project. It's a cosmological simulation of a galaxy formation using state-of-the-art coding. So what other materials go into making a galaxy? Well, gas, clouds of gas and dust are believed to have eventually collapsed under their own gravitational pull to form the Milky Way's first stars. And you may be wondering, well, how many galaxies are out there? And there's actually like 100 billion galaxies. And that is estimated by the Hubble Space Telescope. And that number continues to increase the more technology we have. And of course, you may have heard in the news this past week about the James Webb Space Telescope. And we're going to learn so much more from that telescope. So Hubble's Space Telescope is about 30 years old now. You see it here on the left. And on the right is the James Webb Space Telescope. And the detail and the resolution that this new telescope is able to capture is so much beyond what Hubble was able to do. So a lot sharper. And it can go really deep into the galaxy. So this was one of the images that we saw this past week that was released by NASA, and it is known as the cosmic cliffs of the Carina Nebula, and what it's showing are these young star clusters, almost like a nursery of stars, so a region where young stars are being born. And then we also saw these pictures come out of the Webb Space Telescope. And this kind of looks more aligned with what I envision us doing today, where you've got this center area where we're going to put some patterns, and then our dark matter all around that with various colors. So this is the Southern Ring Nebula, and it's shown in different infrared views. So on the left is what's near infrared, and then on the right is what's known as mid-infrared light. So galaxies can take a lot of different shapes. They can be spiral, like this one here on the left. They can be elliptical, and they can be irregular. So I just want to kind of go through a few pictures so you can, again, get your creative juices going. Think about your colors that you want to have. This is a spiral galaxy known as M66. This is another spiral galaxy. It's got a lot of light blue in it. It's NGC 6753. This is our Milky Way galaxy, which is a spiral galaxy. This is an elliptical galaxy, so you kind of see it, if you can imagine, a little elliptoid through the picture, kind of going top right to bottom left. This is another picture of a galaxy, but it doesn't really have a shape. It's not spiral, it's not elliptical, it's what's known as an irregular galaxy. But I love all the red that is in this one. And here's another one. I don't know, the first word that comes to my mind when I see this is very Da Vinci. You know, what you would almost picture him painting on the Sistine Chapel. And here's another one. This is known as the Crab Nebula. And then another one here. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and for a second. And I want to hold up some of my work. So now you can take those images of the galaxies and, you know, start again thinking about what colors you want. So this was one of the first ones that I did with a variety of different colors, but you see that I have one area where I've drawn patterns in. This is another one. Again, we're just kind of using very loose watercolor around to create our dark matter, and we're just leaving a small area. I've left it primarily in the center of all of these, but you can leave it to the side. It doesn't have to be in the center necessarily. And then there's this one. So the size of my paper is probably about 9 inches by 6 inches or 5 by 7. So you don't want to work too small, but you also don't want to work too large because it'll take you a while to complete something. I am going to go ahead and share my screen again and put my dot camera up so you can see what I'm going to be doing step by step. Okay, so first thing we need to get ready is paper. And again, work not too big but not too small, and my piece is about 6 by 9. I'm just going to put a little tape down for the ability to not have my page fold up, and then get my watercolors ready. So it really doesn't matter what kind you're using. I have these watercolor paints by Josie Lewis. They're just pan watercolors. You can use Crayola watercolors. In fact, I just ordered some Crayola watercolors for myself. I heard that the educational brand of Crayola pan colors are really vibrant, so I want to try those out. One thing I like to do is get my watercolors softened up, so I add a little bit of water to each one with an eyedropper. And if you don't have an eyedropper, then you can just use your brush and just put a lot of water on your brush and dip it down into your well. Just to add some water, soften those pan watercolors up. All right. Any questions on anything so far? Everybody good? Okay. All right, I am going to move that to the side. And I've got my space here. So I'm just going to leave an area in the center of where I want to do my patterns. And I don't use pencil. You're going to just kind of mark it with your watercolor. You want to start light and work out to dark. So if you're thinking that you want to use some yellow or some pink or even a very light orange, now is the time to do that. You know, so think about the area where you want to leave your white space and just mark that with your paint. And we're just going to paint out from there. So it doesn't take, you know, skills in watercolor painting to do this part. Just have fun and be loose with the paint. So I add color, I add water, and I build out from there. If you do wet on wet, so you can see some of this kind of bleeds into the color, it keeps it nice and loose. So all we're doing right now is laying the paint down. And depending on how much water you use will necessitate how long it's going to take to dry. So we can dab with some tissue paper, napkins, we can use a blow dryer as well. And I'm just choosing colors randomly. I like the lighter colors around the center. I think it really helps direct the eye and make it nice and bright. But I'm working my way towards darker colors on the ends. And you can get a couple of these going. So while one is drying, maybe you start working on another one. And then after you've laid the color down on that one, your first one might be dry and ready to draw on. A lot of what I teach, my mission, honestly, as a teaching artist is that anybody can do this kind of art. I love the challenge of having somebody say, I can't draw, I can't do art, I'm not artistic. And then we sit down and we create something that they are very proud of. And I always say, don't think about it. Just put brush to paper, pen to page, and get going. Have fun. So you can color mix right on your page, or you can do it on your pan. Fortunately, in the desert, with as hot as it is, it doesn't take long for things to dry. When you put dark next to light, it really helps get things popping. So you can keep going on this and adding layers, several layers. The more layers you have, the darker it will become. We just don't have a whole lot of time to sit here and adding those layers, but you can let it completely dry, then go back in and add another layer of color and just keep building it to the point where you're satisfied with the way it looks. All right, any questions on this? All All right. So I just grabbed a tissue paper, Kleenex, and you can go in and you can dab to pick up any paint that might still be a little wet to help speed the drying. Or like I said, if you have a blow dryer, you can use that. But just dabbing with Kleenex, paper towel, it also helps give a little bit of texture to our dark matter of our galaxies. All right, I am going to take the tape off because I'm noticing that the colors that you see on my dock camera look a little lighter than the colors that are actually on my page. So I'm holding it up so you can see that. But I've left one area open for adding the patterns onto. And that area you want to be dry. If the rest of it isn't dry, it'll take some time to dry, and that's okay. But where we want to put our pen, we want it to be dry. Are you ready to put pen to page? And if you aren't, but you want your page to dry a little bit more, get some scrap paper so you can draw your patterns on the side, and then you can add them to your watercolor painting when you're ready. All right, we use the method of Zentangle to add patterns. It's meditative pattern drawing, and each pattern that we do has a name. And the one that I like to use to start off the galaxies is called Fengle. And Fengle almost looks like a star with a little bit of embellishments. So we're going to start with Fengle, and the way this one works is pick a spot within the area that you've left white and make a small little dot, and from that we're going to make a few S's, and you can make them as big as you want, but we're going to do about 5 of these. And I always like to turn my page as I'm doing my drawing so that my hand is always comfortable. So I'm just doing 5 S's, moving out from that center dot. If you do more than 5, that's fine. But you kind of get this very skinny starfish pattern thing happening here. Okay, everybody with me so far? All right, so then from this point, we are going to take the end of one of these S's. So I'm going to start with this one on the top of the page, and I'm going to draw a line bringing it down halfway onto the S that is to the left of it, just about halfway down. And then I turn my page again, I find that tip, I bring a curve down halfway to the S that's below it. I turn my page again, find the tip, do a curve on down halfway. I'm just going around my star shape, bringing those tips on down. Okay, so I've kind of filled out and added these arms to my my star shape. Now we can just have fun embellishing this. And one thing I like to do is go on the inside of each of these 5 arms and kind of mimic the shape by drawing a little bit of a curvy triangle and then coloring it in. And I'm just using a black micron pen, but you can use a black Sharpie, you can use a Uniball, you can use just a black marker to do this. And then I'm going to turn it and do that inner triangle again on the next arm. And then coloring it in. And then turning, drawing that inner triangle. So these are really simple shapes, you know, an S, a curve, kind of like a triangle, and we just put them together to create this star shape. I can feel my watercolor is just slightly damp, but it's pretty dry. Again, in the summer and the heat, as long as there's not too much humidity, things dry pretty fast. I'm on my last one now. And I'm coloring that one in. One more thing that I like to do on these, just to embellish it a little bit more, is I'm going to go all along the outside of my star-shaped fangle and draw a series of little tiny orbs or circles. It's almost like lining this star shape with a string of pearls. And I always turn my page, my drawing that I'm working on, again, so I'm not putting my hand in a weird position, but I'm always maintaining a comfortable drawing position. So you can draw a few more of these stars in your galaxy if you'd like. They always say having an odd number of items is better than an even number. But this is something that you can spend some time on your own doing, creating different colored galaxies with different patterns. And as you get into the process of doing these patterns, it's very repetitive and just very mindful. So depending on how large or small you make your star shape will dictate how much more space you want to fill up. You know, I think I'm going to add one more in this area here and make it just a little bit bigger for fun. I'm going to add 6 arms to this one now. And you don't have to do 5. You can do 6, you can do 3, you can do 4. In the Zentangle method, there are no mistakes. It's your opportunity to have fun with pattern drawing. So Fengal is just starting with a series of those S shapes coming off a center and then adding a curve to the left. Curve out to the left from the tips of each one, coming about halfway down. And then when we get to the inside, that triangle, you can do something different with this one. So maybe in this one, I'm going to do a series of inner triangles, getting smaller as they move towards the center. And I'm just going around and doing each arm individually. And I think just for fun, what popped into my head is now instead of coloring the inside of the triangle, I'm going to color the outside of that outer triangle. When you add darker areas, it adds depth. And we do that with shading with pencil too. And depending upon how big of a space you've got, if you have a small tip like I have an 01, which is a very small end for the black, you could always get a thicker pen to do your coloring in. But when you're using a Pigma Micron by Sakura, you want to have a lighter hand. If you press hard on these small tips, you can burn them out pretty quickly. right, so we've got two of the same basic shape, but they've got different patterns within each of them. I think I want to go back and add my little circles around the outer edges though. How's everybody doing? And still with me? All right, I want to show you a few other patterns, well, at least two other patterns, because we want to fill up the rest of the space. So I'm going to work in this area here because I might still want to add another fingal at some point. But I'm going to work in this area here and do a pattern that's called Nippa. So for Nippa, I want you to draw some orbs very randomly, different sizes, large ones, small ones. Just very randomly, almost like Swiss cheese. Think of the holes of Swiss cheese. Just in the area that you want to do a little bit of a new pattern in. Doesn't have to be the whole rest of the white, just a small little area. Think of Swiss cheese. And after you've drawn those orbs, then what we're going to do is draw a little bit of a squiggly line, just a little curved line. But where you draw your line and then intercept an orb, lift your pen up and imagine the line is falling behind it. So we're not drawing through our orbs. It's almost like you're connecting them with this line. But if you've added a curve, the line next to it should follow the curve that you drew. And we are just going to continue drawing a series of lines mirroring the shape of the first line that you drew as best as possible. And if you get to a point where you're running up against the curve of an orb, incorporate that into your line like I did right here. I kind of went right around that one. And I have to make a decision now in this area here, right? I could have my line go up a little higher, but I'm just going to start it randomly because I know that this is the space I want to fill with this pattern. I'll do something else in this area that's above it. And you'll see I'm getting to this area down here where I've got some color, and I stop my line at that point. That's creating my border. So don't be too regimented about this. Just have fun drawing squiggly lines. Now I have to go back over here on the left and fill the rest of this in. That's about the area that I want to do with that pattern. They're almost like little space balls. Now, similarly with orbs is a pattern that's called helix. And this one is kind of a fun pattern. I'm going to add it over here in this space. And all you need to do is just draw a line that will form the base of this pattern. And then along the line, draw a series of medium-sized orbs that have the line almost in the middle of it, so you have a top and a bottom to these orbs. And then we're going to go in and add some embellishment. So I'm going to take the bottom half of this first orb and just darken it in. And then the next orb, I'm going to take the top part of it and add some hash marks going up and down in a vertical direction. And then just continue to alternate that. Darkening in, adding some hatches. Darkening in, adding hatches. So we're starting to fill this space out. right, one more pattern I'd like to show you is called sedgling. And this one kind of reminds me of the circus act from back in the day, where a clown would have two poles and balance plates on them. That's what this reminds me of. So just pick anywhere remaining in this white space, and I want you to draw 2 lines and cap it off. And then we're going to draw a little bit of a curve, and then around that again with another curve, and then again with another curve, and then one more time. And now you can imagine a pole with a plate spinning on the top of it. That's the pattern. So we can just take this space remaining and add a few more of these. A couple of lines next to each other, cap it off, draw a small curve, and then go around that for a total of 4 of these. And you may start thinking about having them crisscross. They're almost like flying saucers. So just draw them randomly to start adding patterns to the rest of the spaces. And after you've drawn a few of these, you may find that you still have some other white space to fill. And you could go back to filling it with that Nipa pattern, or you could just do some, like we did these orbs along the fangle, you could just do a series of orbs close to each other and fill in any remaining white space that way. When you do that with little orbs just building on each other, it's got a pattern name to it. It's called tipple. Tipple is a good pattern that's a filler for any white space remaining in our pattern drawings. Okay, so you can see that I've got my Nipa, I've got some Fangle, I've got some Sledgling, and then I've got the Tipple and Helix. So it's starting to come together to fill that white space. I still have some remaining space that I'll take some time to fill. But my galaxy is starting to come together. with the light watercolor and the dark matter, the purples and the blues surrounding that. So it's 1:55, and I have a couple more things I want to show you that will help to continue to build out the galaxy. One is adding some shading. So if you have a pencil and either a Q-tip or a tortillon, something to soften our graphite, there's a few things you can do to continue to add some depth to this. So you can see this area here where I've got my string of pearls lining up along my fangle, but I've also added some tipple. I might want to make that stand out a little bit and just add some graphite on the outside of where I've got that original layer of circles. So I just put a little graphite down, and then I take my tortillon, or if you don't have that, you can use the Q-tip, and I soften it. And it will add some depth and make this, fangle stand out a little bit.
And what graphite pencil are you using? Are you using like a 2B or?
Yeah, this is actually a 2B. It's not my favorite, but if you've got a 2B, a 4B, or 6B, the softer the graphite, the easier it is to soften it around with a tortillon.
And what is your favorite? But is it,
I think this is a Venus drawing pen, and it's just not the best. I do like
oh
2Bs, but I don't
oh
like
okay.
this particular brand, but it's
Okay.
the one that I grabbed. You can even use an
Uh,
HB. An HB is decent at that. So if you have a Ticonderoga, you
mhm.
could use that as well. Um, this NIPA is kind of neat because if you were drawing your curved lines and drawing them mirroring each other, there's an area where they should kind of be wavy together, and you can add a little bit of graphite along one of those humps, if you will, and that makes that get a little more dimension to it. And then you can go within these circles that you drew and add a little crescent of shading to each of those. Graphite on watercolor paper grabs really well. So if you are using a high B level, you don't need to add that much. I always like to start lighter and then add more if I need to increase the dimensions. Okay. And then we've got sedgling, so I think I'm going to go around kind of the same idea. Just take one little spot on it and add some graphite, kind of coming out from the center to the right, just a little bit on each of those.
Now, would you always do this with graphite or could you use colored pencil?
If you're going to do shading, I would use graphite. You could also add colored pencil to add more color to this if you wanted to. But the shading, the dimensionality should come from the graphite. So we can continue shading, but two more things I want to show you before we leave for the day so you can continue to work on this on your own is now adding the stars, right, to the dark matter. There's a couple ways you can do that. So you can take a white gel pen. You can have a jelly roll pen. This is a Uniball Signo white pen. And you can just add some dots randomly to the darker areas and add those stars. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is just taking white acrylic paint that you can get at Michael's or Walmart and an old toothbrush. And I put a little bit of white paint on the toothbrush, and then I take my thumb or my finger with the paintbrush pointing down and I just flick it. And as you flick it, you get that spattered effect. Just like that. Then you can go in and add onto that with the white gel pen. Make sense? Then the last thing you can do when everything is dried is you can come in using this stuff, which is a glitter-based clear coat. It's a brush-on glitter paint. And I'll do it on one of these that's already dry. And just take a paintbrush and you can add some glitter. And now you've added glitter stars on top of your white stars. That would be the final touch on these drawings.